Hello, and welcome to The Fool and the Philosopher.
The Philosopher and the Fool.
So, I just showed you the Skinny Bob footage from Ivan0136, I think it's called.
Yeah.
What's your take, without me influencing you to start with?
Okay, so the first footage of the multiples, I'm uncertain of. The second one looks like a 3D model or 3D animation that then had effects put over it to make it look older.
So, do you want to describe what this footage is as well?
Okay, so it's footage of, so to say, little green men. It's the Greys, the very classic idea of the large head, big eyes, little mouths, weird, creepy bodies. It's very much used as a medium that people decide at some point that this is what aliens look like.
Yeah. And so, you think the first one you don't know what to say?
The first one I don't know what to think because a lot of the footage is a lot moving up and down a lot more, and someone could add that in also artificially to add more credence to it. But also, I don't know, I showed you that footage of the orangutan freaking out with the otters, and the orangutan doesn't look exactly real as a creature. But they just could be puppets, maybe, although that'd be
they're all blinking.
Yeah, that's doable. That's really, really
and
hard.
Their muscles are contracting when they blink around their eyes and stuff. Like puppets, I don't know how good they can Jim Henson and whatnot made amazing
so
puppets.
The walking ones could be a 3D animation. However, it seems like a really weird way to put your effort into making a 3D animation of quality like that, although maybe you're trying to add credence to it like that.
Yeah.
But the second one doesn't look real to me.
It's also slowed down, remember?
Yeah, it's slowed down, which makes their blinking incredibly fast, actually.
Slow.
If the footage slowed down, then that blinking's very fast.
A lot of surface area to cover.
Yeah, but it just looks weird, and I don't know if that was a 3D model, which I mean I've seen Men in Black, and so you can do some pretty good stuff. You can do some good stuff with animatronics, but that's 2000s and later level of animation. We could barely do stuff to a quality if that's before 2000, like CG.
Well, these videos were put on YouTube in 2011.
Yeah, 2011. So the time they were uploaded, that's completely doable. And then the effects to add afterwards is very, very easy.
So some CGI artists have actually weighed in on those videos.
Yeah.
And people that claim they're CGI artists, because it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
But some of them have actually put their links to IMDb,
Yeah.
I worked on whatever movie I worked. And they figure the estimates range, but if it is CGI,
yeah,
they figure the cost would range from I think it was $10,000 to $40,000 to make that short clip.
Yeah, like I said, it would take. It's insanely advanced, but it just doesn't look real.
So
And that's why I was saying the first one, it just doesn't seem worth it to make it jump up and down like that at all.
well, so I'll give my take now.
Yeah.
So the first one, it's in black and white.
Yeah.
It's jumping up and down. Mm-hmm. It's in 480.
Yeah.
And there's YouTube compression involved.
Yeah.
I think you can actually get away with a lot cheaper animation than the CGI artists think, because you have so many obscuring factors in the way. I watched the second video where it's just the still camera, frame by frame for a bit of it, and it is so blurry on the highest resolution frame by frame that you could cover all sorts of sins with that basic. I don't actually think it's that high quality animation. In fact, I think these videos are so fake that they're supposedly leaked KGB films, right?
Yeah.
If the KGB announced, they're gone, but if Putin announced, those are real. Those are real footage that the KGB took, I wouldn't believe him.
Yeah.
If the United States government was we checked too, that was real. We had this agreement with these people, with these Zetas, and that's what they called them.
Yeah.
And this is real footage, I'd be no, I don't believe it. If Skinny Bob, the subject of the second video, came to me and said, no, this is real, I wouldn't believe him, because it looks so fake. I would think it was a video based on him.
Yeah, well,
because
the second one just looks weird.
He moves like he's on a track. His head is smoothly like it doesn't look real to me. And I'm really bad at CGI normally, so maybe I'm way off here as well. But his head movements are so unnatural, and I don't mean like, you know, like birds can do weird things. But no, his head looks like it's on a track that is like getting dragged around and stuttering in places and smoothly turning. Like he would have to have the I think they're called smooth muscles.
Yeah.
Like in his neck for that to work or something. Well, like the fine control would be ridiculous.
The animation is not a lot of the cost there. It's making the model and texturing it. That would be.
But then they like wasted all that effort because like
it's just not rigged. Two different skill levels.
Yeah,
but just the jumping up and down for such a short while, it just seems like. I said adding credence to it, but it just
makes it look more believable. Because also the idea is that it's a hidden camera that a person's wearing to film the aliens.
Yeah.
So it's like a leaker from the KGB, basically.
Okay.
And so they claim there's an hour and 20 minutes of video, and this guy was going to upload them bit by bit, but then just stopped in 2011.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it looks really fake. But a lot of people think like, wow, like the eye movements, they really focus on the eyes, but I think the animators probably did too.
Yeah.
Like you look at the head movement and it looks wrong.
Well, that's what threw me off about the second one was the mouth movement. Even breathing in, people don't. Animals in general don't have a regular movement with their face, and it was like.
They might have been talking or something.
Yeah, but even like it just didn't look entirely right, and also the way the arms and the lower body just.
Well, you shouldn't expect them to act like a human or look.
Yeah, well, I wasn't saying act like a human or look. I was just saying like the movement of them. Its movement. I know it was slowed down, but even then, this movement didn't look right.
In the first video, the really impressive thing is all the aliens look different.
Yeah. And
they're all moving in different ways. Like you can see personality in each of them. Yeah. And one of them will turn their heads, whereas another one will like talk to someone beside him, or like one will swing his arms loosely. Like if you slow that down, all 5 or 6 of them look different, are moving differently, and acting with different mannerisms.
Yeah.
Which is very impressive, actually. Like that would take a lot of creativity for an animator.
Yeah.
And plus you'd have to rig up like 6 models or something, or their puppets or whatever. But still, it'd be impressive to make them all move separately. But the thing about that is I don't see why you couldn't actually get 6 people to like take just stock footage of 6 people walking down a hallway and then base all the aliens on those 6 people.
You want to know how I drew that Crusader? I took a picture of myself, and then I grabbed elements from the internet and put them into the right spots, and then I drew over that, and then I colored it in, and then I shaded.
Yeah, like I think it's very hard to be creative enough to create the aliens walking like that just from ground up.
Yeah.
But if you just get some reference stock footage of a business meeting, then it's a lot easier. So if these, like I don't think it would be, like the CGI artists I feel like are overestimating the cost, but they should know better than me. And if it is the case that it costs like $20,000 to make, that's just...
Like why?
Some people, you know, they have money to spend and they have time. Or it could be an incredibly talented individual just spending a lot of their free time on a little hobby.
Yeah, well, I mean, it could mean like if you plan to like continue releasing stuff, but then something came up in his life and he just stopped. He's like going to keep releasing stuff and then maybe go like psych, or it's just like his little fun fantasy he was putting on.
The other you'll notice the videos aren't super popular. Like I think the best one might have 500,000, but I don't think it even has that.
Yeah.
And most of them are like 20,000-30,000.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder if someone overestimated the revenue from YouTube and put a lot of effort into something and thought, if this takes off, I'll make more.
Yeah.
And then it just wasn't, it didn't take off enough. And then, because in 10 years, 500,000 views from something revolutionary, like aliens, isn't much.
That's what, like $300?
Is that it?
Okay, sorry, no, I'm...
500,000? No, that would be like...
No, sorry, I'm wrong.
That'd be like 20,000 or something, right? Like...
No, my channel almost has 500,000 views. But a lot of views are before I got monetized.
Yeah.
But,
No, but you can make up to like a couple pennies per click or something, right? Or no, like a penny per click maybe.
No, not a penny per click.
You don't think so?
No, it's like 1/10 of a penny per click or less.
No, but like there's different...
Yeah.
Like PewDiePie gets a lot more than...
I guess if those were uploaded in 2011 as well,
There wasn't advertising as much.
But you got a lot more for it. You got like 1/3 of a cent.
Okay, let's say it's 1/3 of a cent. And then so they're getting like So divide that by 3, they're getting math. Let's say there was 600,000.
Yeah.
So they're getting 200,000 pennies. So they're getting $2,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're not making their money back.
No.
Yeah. And let's say it was triple that. They could make up to, let's say, $10,000 from, I don't know, sponsorship deals, crazy stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, sponsorship deals can go crazy high, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're not making their money back.
No.
But I don't think they would have messed the estimation up like that, because I don't think YouTube was really, in 2011, you weren't, there was people making money, but that wasn't, I think people didn't see it as like television or something.
No.
Yeah, I just thought that was kind of an interesting little video where it's very well done.
Yeah.
But I just thought it looked so...
Yeah, I'll watch it a few more times.
So incredible. Like there's a lot of debates about it, but for me it just looked so fake that I was like, if Skinny Bob himself said like, yeah, that's real, I was like, no, it's not. And he's like, yeah, okay, fine. They made a model based off of me, and unless the aliens move really weird.
Yeah.
Like really, really weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like I saw a video of a rhinoceros walking.
Yeah.
And it didn't look real.
No.
Like they're because I guess they just move weird.
Yeah. No, they do. So
you had a light little topic.
Yes. You know the video game Sea of Thieves?
Yes.
So back when it was like announced to be released, that was actually around the same time as No Man's Sky.
Yeah.
And I was looking forward to both games a lot. And then like they both came out, and they both had their own problems when they came out. But over time, both of them have become good games. And Sea of Thieves, I think, has always been a kind of good game for what it's meant to be. And so I bought it ages ago, like I think around Christmas time. And then I finally downloaded it. And I was playing it like single player, did a bit of tutorial. And then I asked a guy who I know who plays it. I was like, hey, do you want to play with me? I was like, sure. And so he gets in Discord and we're like, going along. And he's like, we're just talking about like what I've done. I was like, I've done barely nothing. And I was like trying to figure this game out. And then he, being more experienced, I said, why don't you take the helm? And he's like, sure. And then he's like telling me what to do. It's like, just because you're the helm doesn't mean you're a captain. And he's like, yeah, I know that. It's like, yeah, there's actually quite a difference between captains and helmsmen. He's like, yeah, I'm a master class helmsman. And so this is Fritz, is his profile name. So actually, no, I will cut that. But this guy is a military officer in the Navy. And I just like felt like a bit of an idiot, like talking about things like he's a masterclass navigator, like helmsman. He knows how to helm a boat. He's a navigator. He teaches people how to use radar. He's like a career Navyman. Well, he's kind of like the trucking simulator people. Like he really likes playing Sea of Thieves, and he's like part of the Navy. And when we're going along, he's like, "All right, do whatever to starboard." I was like, you mean the right? He's like, yes. I was like, could you call it the right? She's like, no, it's starboard. And he called it like the aft and the, what is it? The front and back is the aft. And
bow and the stern?
Yeah, the bow and the stern. And he had port and starboard. And he wouldn't refer to things in like normal terms. And
did he call all the stairs ladders? And
yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, he said like climb up the ladder.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense because you could be facing any direction on the ship and you need to know which side of the ship to...
Yeah, but it's I just found it really funny. Like, we were just on the two-man boat going along, and basically he made me arm the cannons and, like, learn how to fire them. And, like, we did a boss battle. We did, like, 2 different boss battles, and, like, I made a ton of money, but it took a long, long time to do that, but I got fairly rich out of it. And one of the funniest things about this whole experience is, so we were going along, and we encountered 2 people who had played this game a lot more than him, and he's like played the game a lot, and they're on their own little thing. And so there's these flags in the game where you can basically ally with people and make a navy, and you can like get more and more ships together. And so they had that thing up, so we allied with them, and then we were just going along, and we docked in the same port with them, and we helped them get their treasure out of their boat. And then me and the guys playing with, we just decided to jump onto their boat, and so we went about with their boat, and like they did some stuff. And then it's like, okay, let's go do our own things again. So we went back to our own boat and we were going along. And then one of the guys jumped off his boat and ended up in our boat and was going along doing stuff with us. And they went back to his boat, and then we like did this incredibly long boss battle. And they were in the fight with us, but their ship sunk. However, there's these little rowboats you can get into. And so while we were doing the boss battle, we see this little rowboat come up. And both of them are sitting in the rowboat and just like comes up next to our boat, and they hop out and get into our ship. And then they help us complete the boss battle. And we have a ton of treasure at this point. We get to port and we sell all that treasure. And then they like leave us. And it's just like, it was super chill because at one point, like, we couldn't talk, there was an in-game chat. I don't think they spoke English very well. But we were just like navigating the boat and we all had the instruments out and the instruments just like synchronized with each other. We're all just like chilling and playing the instruments together. And then like he'd chat like in broken English, like, not this song. So we'd like switch songs. And so then later that night, I like logged back on Sea of Thieves and I just joined a random crew. So I'm pretty certain the crew was like kids that are still in high school or something. And one of them wasn't chatting. The other two were like incredibly young voices. And I think they'd spent the whole day doing this one keep over and over and over again to get the treasure out of it. Basically like just grinding the treasure. I randomly joined their crew. And so we dropped off the treasure. And it was way more than I'd like earned with the other guy. But it's just, I thought I should add that. It's kind of funny that I just got like a bunch more treasure out of that. So it's like, I've played the game basically from the start of me playing the game to the point I got to. I've been playing as people who've played the game for hours. And most people are actually incredibly chill and friendly in the game Sea of Thieves. And so it didn't really... I encountered a group of reavers who attacked my ship while I was by myself, and they started like looking for me whenever I respawn, trying to bow about myself and murdering me. Which wasn't very nice, but that's what reavers do. It's just a really fun game. I just thought it was really funny. It's like... I was almost like lecturing a guy. It's like, oh yeah, the captain and the steer guy aren't the same. And it's like, he is the expert, definitively, on this topic. You have nothing to say?
No.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll just cut this whole bit.
What was I gonna...
How do we segue?
No, I was just like, oh, great. That's what I'm trying to avoid. You went crazy with the likes, and now I'm wondering, how do you break out of it again? You put on a funny voice, see?
No, you,
No, that's what you said, right? You put on a radio voice.
That's one of the things you can do. You can also replace it with a different word. Shall I redo that section without all the likes in it?
No. You said you said you're a bit, see? No.
Okay,
Okay, well, I want to talk about Yasuke, the Black Samurai.
Okay.
All right, so I was watching Yasuke.
Yes.
I think that's just its name.
Yeah.
It's about a black samurai, and it's kind of an interesting premise because he is I don't remember where. He's from Africa. He is brought on as a servant or a slave, I'm not sure, by the Dutch or the French or the English or something.
He was by the Dutch.
He goes to Japan, and a Japanese daimyo buys him.
Yeah.
And Japanese gaimyo, I think, which I'll get into, buys him, and then because he realizes that this guy's an absurdly good fighter, he wins a fight unarmed against a sword master, basically.
Yeah.
And so he buys him and makes him one of his samurai of his house. Yeah. So very cool. Like the animators are amazing.
Yes, it's very cool animation.
Yeah. The world's a bit silly. There's like robots and
silly
and wizards and priests and all sorts of stuff. The writing is kind of terrible, and yes. I want to talk about that. This is a show written by progressives for progressives.
Yeah.
It is absurd the amount they go into how... Well, there's this very funny thing. So one of the things that Yasuke says a lot is you have to know someone's past in order to know their future. And he says the past informs the future. And so you're like, okay, well, he's very traditional. He believes in his homeland. He wants to keep the tradition alive. And you're like, fair enough, cool. That's his culture, and he wants to keep it alive. And then the Japanese culture, though, there's a man saying everything you're doing goes against our culture. You're causing senseless deaths by not honoring our friendly people. And Yasuke says, then maybe the past should die.
Mm.
He has no respect for... He's like a total cultural chauvinist. Which, fair enough, I guess, if his culture is way better. But he is being very inconsistent. He never says, my culture is better than yours. He says, I have to know the past so I can know the future. And then he says to everyone else, your culture should die.
Okay, well, you got a lot more out of this.
I'm not done yet.
I didn't pay attention to this. I just watched the animation for the fights. Honestly, I skipped some of the story to get to the fights.
So, there's that brutal bit where he just completely ignores this old man's culture while saying his own is incredibly important. Furthermore, it seems like a major plot point for at least the first few episodes the daimyo has, as one of his, he has seven main samurai, I guess.
Yeah.
One of them is a woman, one of them's black, and the other five are like Japanese men, I guess.
Yeah. From different groups, or
I don't know.
They're part of his group.
They're like very minor characters as far as I can tell, except for the one old man.
Yeah.
So they're called like, oh, you're disgraced. You shouldn't trust. Like, he's got black skin. You shouldn't trust him. She's a woman. She can't be trusted with battle. So I don't think the writers of the show are Japanese, or maybe I'm wrong here, but women were samurai, right?
Yes, they were.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Samurai was a family class, so if your parents were samurai, then you were samurai.
Yeah.
And it was very hard to change from up and down, and people could become fighters, and then they'd have to get hired on into a household. And so if you're a man, then you go to the front lines to fight. And the female samurai guarded the household estate and used bows a lot more because it was wall combat. So their weapon use was different because they were trained to fight in buildings. So they used shorter swords and bows from walls.
Yeah, so women were samurai.
Yeah.
And outsiders were samurai as well.
Yeah.
Like, well, in The Last Samurai, of course.
Yeah, The Last Samurai.
That guy was British, I think.
Yeah, there's British. There's several cases of that. So there's the...
or maybe American.
There's the Iron Samurai, who was a man from Europe who came and had basically full European gear. There was a group of Dutchmen who became Ronin, and there was Vikings, a small amount of Vikings.
Really?
Yeah, Vikings ended up everywhere. There's Vikings that were bodyguards to people in Egypt. There's Vikings who ended up in
I know there was
Constantinople.
Yeah, I know what those.
Yeah, so there's bodyguards in Egypt and the African
well.
area.
Yeah.
There's Vikings who end up in North America. There's Vikings who end up in China. There's Vikings who end up in Japan. And the ones who end up in Japan raided the Japanese coastline for a short while. Then samurai attacked them. And they ran away with a bunch of samurai gear and buried it in one of their holes.
Right, so getting back to my point. So there's a precedent for women being quite common as samurai, and for outsiders being accepted as samurai. Yeah. Although that one I could see being a bit weirder. Like, I could see them saying, hey, don't bring this random outsider because he hasn't proven himself. Mm-hmm. But the moment Yasuke defeated the daimyo of the neighboring clan, they should have respected him, because he showed that he was able to fight using their own methods successfully, and he spared the daimyo's life. Yeah. So I think at that moment they should have said, oh, you are accepted as a samurai. Yeah. And then maybe, if they're in their weird world, they fight. They're like, okay, let us fight the woman then. Mm-hmm. So this is a fantasy world, so the cultures could be different. They could be like 1850s British people or something.
Except it's putting different historical values
not liking black people, so...
They're putting different historical values onto
Americans.
The Japanese.
Yeah.
Which I feel like the more... Like, they sort of do this a bit. But,
you have Tourette's now? Or?
No. Yasuke, is that the samurai's name? Should have been stared at a lot more, basically.
Well, he gets a lot of looks. They call him the Black Boatman and everything. Yeah. And
the Russian should have gotten in a lot of stares.
Yeah, the Russian didn't get nearly as much as him, though, and she should have.
She's a lot more different than him.
Japan is weird. They're very conscious of minor differences in people. Yeah. It's much more extreme than in, well, the States, for example, where I'm pretty sure this was written. But there is that scene where they buy him because they're like, this guy's an amazing fighter. Yeah. And then he's like, and my servant shall be washed. And he hires a washerman to wash him. And he strips naked and he starts washing him. And why isn't your skin getting clean? Because they have no idea, they have no concept of a different skin color.
It's actually very interesting, though, of them cleaning him that was immensely respectful, because that's their religion is cleanliness is next to godliness. Quite literally in Japanese culture, cleansing and being clean is getting closer to divinity.
And I thought the scene did that quite well. They made it seem like an honor. Yeah. Anyways, so this group of samurai is disapproved of by the traditionalist of the house, who's the leader of the samurai of the daimyo's household. Yeah. And hints, I believe, although I haven't got, like, I only got like 2 or 3 episodes in, that the daimyo is gay and his advisor is his lover or something. But it's played kind of weird, and his advisor might be a woman actually because he looks weird.
Yeah.
But I think it's a guy because he had a deep voice. And so they sort of hint at that anyways. And then they show they don't say anything, but they show them like holding hands. And then they show the elder samurai looking disapprovingly at him.
Yeah.
So here's the thing about this. So it's like progressive heaven of like, oh, these guys are the Yasuke is going to show how amazing he is, and that woman's going to show how amazing she is, and the daimyo is the greatest warrior in the entire world, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's a very progressive type of show. But the interesting thing is it actually completely goes against the entire progressive message.
Yeah. Because
the daimyo's household has him and 3 of the best samurai in the world. The old man, the woman, and Yasuke.
Yeah.
And the reason he has them is because he has a meritocracy. Because he only wants the best for his household, no matter who they are, what they look like, what the culture says about them. And progressives are anti-meritocratic.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at Canada as a great example, the NDP and the Liberals both have diversity quotas.
Yeah.
Which is the least meritocratic thing there is.
Also on the whole thing of them like being...
Well, besides an anti-meritocratic, you hire the worst person. That'd be the least.
Yeah, them being the gay lovers and disapproving like he suggests or not, he shouldn't care about that either.
Well, that has nothing to do with his leadership capabilities.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with his leadership, but also the Japanese...
Well, they had 3 genders in Japan as well, right?
Yeah. Yes, and they didn't care about that. It was until World War...
they had men that like dressed like women, and men and women.
Yes.
Yeah.
Until World War II, Japan did not care about that stuff. Then the emperor and the minister both disliked it, and that's just, I think, almost a part of fascism, is disliking of that stuff. And then Japan did have laws against it.
Well, it's also anti-Christian, and the Americans kind of took over Japan.
Yeah. But then Japan basically very, very quietly made it legal to do all that stuff again, and they're still rather quiet about it, and they just don't care.
Well, it's like when you compare Japanese gay pride parades to like...
It's men in suits.
Just like walking quietly down the street.
And well-dressed men and women walking down the street.
Yeah. Yeah, they're very dignified. And
I remember one, it was... I think it might have been not American, but some sort of tourist was there in the parade, and he was a little too much for them, and they asked him politely to leave, because that's not how they do it.
Yeah. No, they're very reserved people, except once they're like at home oh, wow, it's got me as well. Partaking in their favorite media. I almost said consuming media. Have I ranted about that before?
No, but let's steer clear of that for the moment.
Because
we have enough to talk about.
Yes, but the whole idea of a consumer, I think, is very anti-consumer. It's anti-human. You're treating people as means to eat things.
Yeah.
It's horrible. Anyways, so this show takes place in Japan, in quotation marks, but it's 1950s America.
Yeah.
And...
With mechs.
With mechs and Russians and women who can fly through the air with their scythes. Like, there is a clear precedent for women being incredibly effective fighters in the world. The main
villain's a woman.
And she's a wizard, though, or something, right?
Yeah, but the main villain's a woman.
But if they're saying a woman can't be a samurai because she's less effective for the household or something, it's ridiculous, because there is the Russian woman and the scythe-wielding woman, who are both incredibly talented mercenaries.
Yeah.
The other thing, I want to just hammer more on the bad writing of this. The first time they come across the mercenaries, the robot freezes an entire river with its gun while it's standing in the river, and then they fight in the river, Yasuke and the robot.
Yeah.
Later, they're fighting in the bar, and the robot's about to kill Yasuke, but then beer gets spilled on one of its circuits, and so it starts misfiring wildly.
Yeah.
This robot was submerged in a river, and now it can't handle getting splashed.
Maybe beer is the problem.
Beer is... Also, the robot is written so poorly. Mm-hmm. It's like... They just took a stereotype and made it like the classic, this is illogical. It's a Vulcan.
Yeah.
It's a bad Vulcan. It's not even an interesting Vulcan. It's just a walking stereotype.
It would be a really good show if the writing was good.
It's the that's the same people that made Castlevania and whatnot, is it? No?
No, completely different team.
Okay. These people, well, whoever is making this animation,
Yeah.
I think are the most talented animators I've ever seen outside of Studio Ghibli and Disney.
Yeah.
Like, they are really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And I have...
Like, it would be a really good show if the writing was good.
My question is, how do you pair the, like, third most talented animators on Earth, as far as I'm aware,
With some really
with
bad
writers like this? Like, how do these writers have jobs?
Mm.
There's a lot of really good writers out there.
Yeah.
And they're giving them the bottom of the barrel for the best animators out there.
Yeah. So, have you seen the final season of Castlevania?
The new one that just came out? No, because
it's the better written than all the other ones before it.
Because the one I really liked the first season.
Yeah.
And then it just went downhill.
I think it's better written than the first season.
Mm.
Its writing and animating are both really good. I really, really liked it. And
because the voice acting in Castlevania is amazing.
Yeah, so
I have to say.
Netflix has recently done 2 shows. So they've done, well, I mean, they did the final episode of Castlevania, and they did Jupiter Rising. And both of those, you're sort of like, oh, they have like this one view, and this is what you have to do because it's right. But it's more nuanced than that. So Jupiter Rising, so no Superman, sort of like the idea of the Justice League. Basically take the sort of plot to this book right here.
Kingdom Come?
Kingdom Come. Kingdom Come is basically Jupiter Rising. There's a few differences. But so the main character is called the Utopian, and he's kind of a weaker version of Superman.
That is a really cool name.
Yeah.
And I don't know if
it really fits him.
I don't know if they did it on purpose, but a utopian would be the citizen of no place.
Yeah.
So they're the person from nowhere.
Yeah.
Which is a really cool name.
Well, it's a very...
I assume they're meant to be like an idealist or something.
Yeah, he's an idealist.
But
yeah.
the actual name is the person from no place, which is really cool.
There's 2 stories that go on throughout it. One of the stories is how this original superhero squad, which is basically like Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, whatever, how they got their powers. And then it's them in the modern world trying to deal with it and morals. So they have a code, which is you cannot kill. And that's like one of the main parts of the code is you cannot kill and you cannot influence world products. They do not lead. They just help people.
So very not Wonder Woman.
No.
She's a murdering politician.
Yeah. But so the Utopians, basically, these are his tenets. And it's getting worse and worse in the world. And the superheroes are basically like, the supervillains are trying to kill us. If we don't kill them, then we'll get killed. And they actually start getting killed. And unlike other stories which I have, or things I've watched where it's like, oh, I have this noble code, I will not kill. And then it's like, oh, this person's outdated and superheroes have to kill. It's actually, no, there is still a moral thing to it because one of the superheroes does kill someone to save the rest of them. And it messes him up. And he's like, this is the biggest regret of my life. It's like, I had to choose between you and him because he was going to kill you, and so I had to kill him here. And he's like, if there was any other option, I would have taken it. And the Utopian's like, you shouldn't have killed him still. And so it's a guy sort of locked in place with his vow, but he's like constantly talking to people and trying to get better. It's like, why do I have this code? Why is it so important to me? What do these values mean? So it's like actually really nuanced. I thought it was just going to be like, I don't know what sort of writing style it'd be, but it's very much like, oh, out with the old, in with the new, these superheroes are outdated, their ideas are terrible. It's actually
nuanced and interesting.
Yeah, it's nuanced and interesting. And the final season of Castlevania is nuanced and interesting. It actually has nuance to it. There's more to it, and they don't just make it like, oh, I'm evil because I'm evil. There's a bit more to it. There's one character I kind of don't like his writing, but it's not all that big. And I think it's like the best season of Castlevania, honestly. Oh. Or maybe the first season's still better, but it's well written out, and the animating is superb.
The first season was scraping the line.
Okay, well, the animation I think is better than the first season, and I liked it better writing wise than the first season, personally.
So Netflix, I guess, still has some okay writers.
Yeah,
it's just they're not working on Yasuke.
Yeah, no. Jupiter Rising is actually very, very well written. I think is one of the better shows they've made.
So more on that note of nuance and not nuance and bad writing, we have Frosthaven. Mm-hmm. You got a letter from Frosthaven recently from Isaac
Childs or
Childs? Yeah. Yeah, I think it's Childs or something,
Yeah,
right?
Childs.
Yeah. Of Cephalofair Games, where he stated that I think this is correct, the person that ruined D&D, he is now hired to ruin his own games.
Yeah.
And he wants to do this by removing anything that could offend people from his game, which is a bold goal.
Yeah.
A game about mercenaries in a colonial world. And he is aware of that, and he wants to offer more choice. His main issue, it sounds like, was that his games, you were forced to be someone that you might not agree with. You were forced to be to kill children in one point. You were forced to be bloodthirsty. You were forced to
be in for the gold and
continue a city's colonial prospects.
Yeah.
And so he wants to give you more options in the game. And he also wants to races. He felt they were stereotypes of real races.
Yeah.
And so he wants to try to make the races. He wants to remove any taint, I guess you could call it, of real world cultures from his game to make his game completely removed from the real world, so that he's not stealing from anyone's cultures, and he's also not saying that all Inox are like this or all Quartrels are like this.
So that's the thing I take issue with, which is why I wanted my point. So I'm saying not all Inoxes are big and honor bound. Well, they're all big, but they're not honor bound and brutish, and not all Quartrel are really smart and technical. That is the most human-centric, I'm not even human-centric, but like specious thing in a way, because Inoxes are not humans. Humans have their own cultures divide across the thing, and they can be nuanced. And this is actually the same problem with D&D and people criticizing Tolkien in some ways on this. Elves are not humans. Quartrels are not humans. Dwarves are not humans. So this idea of like, they're not all honor-bound and they're nuanced, that's fine. There can be the odd one, like Dritz is an odd dark elf, and their culture does play a big part. But the living stone men, who their whole identity is built up around strength, they're animated rocks. They aren't people. So the animated rocks literally could have it in their brain that that's what they are. They're obsessed with this thing. The Inox literally could have it a part of their basic makeup that are like this, because when you get down to the chips of people, there are some behaviors in people that are incredibly common, that is behaviors we display over and over again throughout many different cultures.
So you're kind of making a biological essentialist argument, which is something that a cultural engineer would be not swayed by. No. They would be opposed. They're opposed to the very idea of biological essentialism.
But it's like a dog is not a person, right?
Yeah, and dogs can have different personalities.
Yeah, I'm saying they can have different personalities, but dogs
as a whole like to play fetch or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he even says that in his... He says that...
What I just take issue with is treating the Inox like they're human, which is their Inox.
Well, that's actually part of his point, is he's saying that the Inox are not a race of human.
Yeah.
They are a different species, or even higher up. They could be a different genus or a different order or something from humans. And he wants to reflect that in his game, and he thinks the word race for humans is also divisive. He thinks it separates people because people are just black and white, apparently. And he talks about people shouldn't be divided by race. It's very divisive. There's white people and there's black people.
Well, it's more of...
Which I think is a more divisive way to go about it than anything.
That's just sort of what I got out of reading that, was him sort of saying we need to treat everything like they're humans with their own personal
I think
identities.
he actually is kind of saying the opposite. He doesn't want to do that. And furthermore, he talks about how it could be that the cultures, the people are within the culture are different, like the Inox, let's say, are different, but the culture reinforces the idea of strength and honor, and he wants to keep that. He thinks that's fine for cultures to do.
Yeah.
But I think personally, and I think this is something he was getting into as well, it would be interesting if there was different branches of Inox.
There is different branches even already in the game, like those crystal people.
Yeah.
There's the wizards, and then there's the settlers, and the stalkers who don't be all
and
magical.
in the Stoneheart, in the Briarhearts, there's the ones that are obsessed with power, and then there's the ones obsessed with power that are outcasts because they're too weak.
Yeah.
Big difference. But I think that is actually interesting because to a human that seems like the same thing.
Yeah.
But you could say if there is a value that is central to your civilization, you could look at humans from a Briarheart perspective, and you could say the British are people who are obsessed
with tea.
With life.
Yeah.
They're obsessed with the humanity of other people.
Yeah.
And then the Indians, let's say, are people who are obsessed with the life of other people.
Yeah. And the French are obsessed with revolution.
But the French are people who are obsessed with the life of other people.
Yeah.
But also like a bit of if you choose a lens to look at a race, like what you're saying, I think, is if you choose a human lens to look at a fantasy race, you will only see the aspects that make them human. And they might have a massive degree of varying cultural nuance in a domain that people do not normally see.
Yeah.
Or don't understand. Like an elf that likes blue versus an elf that likes purple might be radically different.
Yeah.
Whereas to a person, that's just a minor difference. But this could be a divisive cultural divide in the elves where they don't even consider themselves the same people.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what defines their culture. Dolphins are kind of like that to humans. We don't really understand why they do what they do. But they seem to have some form of morality.
Yeah.
But they will save people. They will fight off sharks. And occasionally they'll torture someone to death or an animal to death and watch them drown. Or they will rape just about other animals, humans and other dolphins. They will torture fellow dolphins to death. And it could be, there's mean dolphins and there's kind dolphins.
Yeah.
Or it could be that they are all following a consistent moral code and we just have no idea how to interpret it or understand it.
Yeah.
So my issue with what he's saying is, part of it is that he's saying you need to remove all cultural influence from the game, and that certain races like the Inox and the Quartrel are very similar to Earth-like races, human-like races. And so that is racist and offends people and hurts people and damages them.
Yeah.
I noticed he was smart enough not to say which races they resemble.
Yeah.
Unlike the guy I believe he's hired who said that orcs are like black people, which is... I mean, that's amazing you can still be in the job.
Yeah.
After saying that. But this... and I don't actually... Like, we were trying to figure out what the Inox and the Quartrel would be.
Yeah.
And Inox we think might be like the Norse or the Danes or the Swedish, because they're big and barbarian-y and Viking-y. Quartrel's less so. They're an industrious, tinkery sort of people, so...
Who knows?
Japanese, Germans, China, I don't know.
There's a lot of...
Yeah, but the thing is, the moment you name one, you are then stereotyping them, and then you are then being racist.
Yeah.
And so, by putting the concept out there, he has actually decided that there are people on Earth that would fit the definition of his fantasy races, which is what he's trying to avoid.
Yeah.
Now, if you're okay with saying Germans are industrious, then it doesn't actually matter if you say, oh yes, my Quartrel are like Germans. Because you're like, well, that's not offensive. But his whole point is that that is offensive.
Yeah.
And yet he's saying his game contains that, which it didn't before. Further to that, his goal is to prevent his game from being divisive and hurting people. Someone in the comments had a very good point who refunded their $300 Kickstarter backing. This person was a believer.
Yeah.
He pointed out that there was 90,000 backers for this game.
Yeah.
For Frostfall, which means that he had united 90,000 people together. They didn't care about who each other were. They were all, we are in this together. We all love your product, and we are united in loving your product. And now, in order to prevent divisiveness and create and foster unity, he has set, it looks like, I mean, people that comment are going to feel stronger about it, but I could take a rough guess just based on the fact that only, 7 to 12% of women will even say they're feminists, because the other 80% are offended by the term.
Yeah.
So let's say to appease 10% of his people, well, he has angered 80% of his audience in order to unify them. So essentially, he had 90,000 unified people.
Yeah.
And now he has something like 10 to 20,000 people fighting 60,000 people and hating each other.
Romanian TV, so V, said this thing which is, I'm very confused by American companies, because Romanian companies don't do this. But when an American company comes out in favor of something or tries to basically like take a political standpoint, you're alienating part of your customers. Just don't have a standpoint and go, yeah, whatever, give us your money. Like, because you just lose customers. You just lose 50% or 20% of your customers, and maybe you're doing it so it's like, oh, this company's really good, we should buy from them. But that's not how consumers works. People are going to buy from what they're going to buy from you unless you annoy them, and then they won't buy.
Have you heard the saying, get woke, get stuck?
I've heard the go broke, not get stuck.
This is because I don't know if the get woke, go broke has actually, or go woke, get broke, whatever it is. I don't know if that's actually been proven to have much of a financial impact or not. Like comics obviously are failing.
Yeah.
But the interesting one is if you take a moral stance as a company, you can never rescind that stance. Otherwise, you are admitting that you are acting amoral.
Yeah.
Or you are now acting amoral. Mm-hmm. So the companies are actually stuck that take a stance. They cannot say, oh, we messed up, because they have now drawn a line. And if they change their mind, then they are saying we were amoral then or we're amoral now.
Yeah.
And the problem is, not only are they saying either we are amoral then or we are amoral now, what happens is, let's say they were the wrong one and then they switch to the right one. Mm-hmm. That means that the people that like where you are now won't buy from you because you were wrong in the past. The people that like where you were then and don't like where you are now won't buy from you because now you've become something they don't like, which means everyone hates you and you're stuck like that forever. So you cannot change. Once you make a stance, you cannot change.
Yeah, they shouldn't make stance. They should just, I don't care about your morality, company. Just don't use slave labor and sell me stuff.
Yeah. So this guy, he made a product that unified 90,000 people.
Yeah.
And now they're divided. And
it makes you not want to play the first game anymore.
And it makes me not want to ever buy it for anyone. Like, the game's great. I can separate the art from the artist, especially if I'm not paying them.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even buy the game in the first place.
Yeah.
It was a gift. But I won't buy from Philosopher games again.
Yeah.
Because, and it's not that if he had brought in a cultural consultant to add culture to his game, that would be interesting. But he actually brought them on to remove culture. And here's the thing. We are culture. We are myth. And you can't remove that from a game. He says you'll remove it, but all you're going to remove is all the stuff the cultural person knows about. And the other thing is, so up here we have the... Who lives in Haines Junction First Nation group?
We have the Kwatan Kwachan.
The Gwich'in.
The Gwich'in.
That's what I want. Yeah, so the Gwich'in...
is that the right one?
That's the one I want to talk about. Okay. But most of them around, if not all of them, I think all of them, love giving free lessons in their culture. They will bring out stew, they'll bring out bannock, and they will teach you sewing, they'll tell you stories. Carving, painting, they will take you dog sled racing. Yeah. They do all these free events paid for by their own governments to spread their culture and spread their language because they don't want it to die. And they love it and they think it's worth sharing.
Yeah. And they also, unfortunately, their culture was actively suppressed. And so by them teaching outsiders their culture, they let it live even more because it was dying for a while and now it's alive. It's like recovering, basically.
And they have their own radio shows where they speak in Gwich'in and Southern Shoshone and Northern Shoshone, and there's centers you can go to where everyone there just speaks the language. Yeah. And this guy wants to remove... They would if you put a Gwich'in inspired character, like a shapeshifter based on Raven, for example, in Frostfall, or Frosthaven, sorry, they would love it. Mm-hmm. And the Japanese people would love it if you put in a Japanese culture person. Yeah. And basically every nation on Earth, with the exception of the Maori, and even we had Maori come up here that were giving lessons in, I believe it was painting. Yeah. And so it's even just most of the Maori even love spreading their culture, just not the ones that sued Lego. Yeah.
I mean, even us, I love knights. I love seeing knights add to media and castles and big things. Like I really like the medieval European thing. I love it when that's used in things and the medieval stuff. Like, that's really cool.
And beyond knights and whatnot, like I guess they're semi-cultural. I guess like chivalry would be more of a cultural thing. Mm-hmm. And and feudalism.
Yeah.
But not the knights themselves necessarily, because that's widespread. But
like the shield culture, the company of the White Wolf here, we actually have the proper shield culture of getting
like heraldry?
Yeah, heraldry. So if you have heraldry that you want to put on a unique shield, the company of the White Wolf doesn't let you do that until you have gone through a squireship. Our squireship is just you have to do a northern survival course and like compete in one tournament. But then you're allowed to put your heraldry onto a shield. And so they actually have like a cultural system for that, which is adopted from how it actually worked.
But we have passed down, since the dawn of humanity, our lessons and our beliefs through culture.
Yeah.
And if every game and every media took the same path that Frostfall is taking, there would be no more culture in any of it.
Yeah.
And what that would mean would be the death of the mythos of humanity. And so that would be the end of human knowledge.
Yeah.
And that would be the end of... You are connected to your ancestors through a thread of history. You can't...
There's part of irony almost in that. So I was listening to the radio on the way here, and it was Writers and Company. And there's a guy who wrote a book about an Asian Canadian, I think, or maybe Asian American, Asian North American, we'll go with that, who wanted to be an actor, but he didn't want to be the main character as a kung fu actor because he didn't know martial arts. He just wanted to be like the main character as an actor. And the guy wrote the story because he's Asian North American and he's a screenplay writer. And he's like, I've never seen the character besides people in martial arts movies. I want a Western movie main character who's Northern Asian. And my one thought is like, why don't you be an actor then and try to like make up for that? But as well, it's like, so he wants this thing. He wants to see that the reflection in Northern culture, or like even just his identity reflected. And then this here is like, but if we do that, then it's bad and we're going to hurt people. And so it's like actually impossible if they're on the same vein. I don't know if they are, but I see some similarities. It's like almost...
I think that...
Like even just the idea though, like I don't see myself in media. It's like, it's impossible to...
Yeah, you if you have representation, then it's racist because you're stealing from people's cultures.
Yeah.
And if you don't have representation, then it's racist because you're not showcasing someone's culture. Yeah. Now, the argument there is that only, let's say, Guatemalans can represent Guatemalan culture or something. Yeah. And so then people can only be what they were born to be, which is
very bleak.
Well, not only that, that is the definition of racism.
Yeah.
That is the whole reason why racism is bad. Racism, until 5 years ago, was a very powerful word.
Yeah.
It hurt a lot to be called racist. And it was a devastating thing to say about someone. Because it meant, you think I am only what I was born to be. I have nothing I can achieve for myself. Everything is determined by my birth.
Yeah.
And that was the problem with racism. You were not... It wasn't the content of your character. It was the color of your skin, which determined everything about you.
Yeah.
And so that is what representation is. And so, let's remove representation then. But when you remove culture, I think they are different there, I guess, because culture is the ideas. And the thing about ideas is they transfer from one person to another. Yeah. You don't have to be born into a culture. You can be given a culture. That's the whole point of culture. It can be forcefully imparted on you, like the Pax Britannica or the Pax Romanus.
It doesn't go well, but it can be.
And like culture, it's religion, it's mythos, it's knowledge, it's understanding.
It's stories, it's the way you cook.
There's so many people alive today that feel they are wounded spiritually because they cannot connect to their ancestors. Yeah. Especially in Canada, where their culture was purposely destroyed. Yeah. And... Well, they are struggling to recover their past and bring it back.
Canada actually has two problems. So there's that. And also Canada has a lot of immigration. And it's people who's like, my family's from there, but I'm in Canada. And my culture, I feel severed from my culture in a different way, as they were detached from it because their parents decided to move to Canada for a better life. Yeah. And then they are no longer connected to the culture their parents had, and they're lost.
Well, there has, I don't know if it's always been historically or not, but about something like 50 to 60% of people move far from where they were born, where their parents
Yeah.
were. And I've felt that, like, our parents, one's from Alberta, one's from BC, although both of them grew up in BC.
Yeah.
And I feel that, like, disconnect of just...
Well, we're not with our cousins or grandparents.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, Adrian von Ziegler, right?
Yeah.
He was talking about a song he wrote where he was walking out in the mountains.
Yeah.
And he was inspired to write the song because he was standing on top of a hill. And he was thinking that, you know, there was probably an ancestor 4,000 years ago standing on the same hill looking over the same view.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm with them right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was the most powerful and amazing image that I can't have.
Yeah.
Unless I, like, go to Scotland or something. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
But...
What about Germany?
Well, the other thing is, like, our people were basically all wiped out, too.
Yeah.
So there's that. And that's the other thing. When your people are wiped out, then you lose that connection as well.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think, so that's, like, it's pretty obvious when someone's people are all dead. You're like, oh, man, you've lost that connection. But I think most, like, 60% of people alive today have also sort of lost that connection.
Yeah.
You don't have the neighborhood where you grew up and then your kids can run over and see your grandparents the next day. Like, people don't live in the same places.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they ever have. But obviously throughout history, at least some have.
Mm-hmm.
And they're now missing that. And this guy seeks to eliminate what little transfer is left from his work to not offend people.
Yeah. And he's offended people through trying to do that.
And so this kind of actually neatly segues into talking about the secret teachings of all ages. Because basically all cultures...
Yeah.
I mean, people were all in one area at one point, right?
Yes.
All stories... So if you look at the Druids, they're the head greatest Druid ever. He was a god, I guess. The sun god. His name is Hu. And... Hu, yes. Or Hugh, possibly. We'll call him Hugh just to avoid confusion.
Did he have a little blue box?
I don't know.
That went...
Anyways, Hugh
And span around?
was... Hugh was born on December 25th. And so they celebrate that day.
Yeah.
And Hugh was murdered. And he came back to life in March, around Easter.
Yeah.
And so they celebrate his resurrection in Easter. And that's the sun. Like, the sun was murdered and comes back. I guess that's winter and summer, possibly.
Yeah.
You'll notice that it's very similar to Jesus.
Yes.
So now, there is the god of... there was Serapis, who was... Serapis is really interesting, actually. He is the embodiment of... He is the ideal embodiment of both man and woman.
Yeah.
He is not a hermaphrodite, but he is instead the perfection of both. So he has this magnificent beard and long, luscious hair. He has like a like willowy shape, and like he's super muscular.
So a bit like Jesus. In the popular like the beard and the long hair. Jesus has very, very nice hair and a very
I guess.
Like Jesus, a lot of drawings of Jesus, like the good ones. Yeah. He's a very handsome face, but also effeminate at the same time, and he's beautiful. Jesus is handsome and beautiful.
That's true. What I'm going to say next is going to be really interesting tied to that.
Yeah.
So he has a woman's face.
Yeah.
But like a massive beard.
Yeah.
And he typically wears long form concealing robes so that the artist doesn't have to be like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
In this picture, he just has like a really buff body. Mm-hmm. He often like acts with grace and kindness, but also courage and strength. And his title is Theon Septigrammatron.
That sounds epic.
So that means the god with 7 letters in his name. Mm-hmm. My name has 7 letters. And I was thinking, what's the equivalent of Theon? Because I'm not a god, right? And I was like, that's demon, right?
Yeah.
So could I be called Demon Septigrammatron? Like, I wish I didn't have a username already on Google and everywhere, because I want to now be Theon Detrigrammatron.
You mean Demon?
Yeah, Demon Septigrammatron. The man with 7 letters in his name.
Demon actually does mean man, too.
Yeah, well, that's what
Or demos, anyways.
That means people. Well, demos would be the people, I think. Yeah. So I think demon would mean person. I think.
It's not demon, it's demon. What you're looking for.
But, so Serapis, he was an incredibly wise person. He he was the uniter between the Greeks and the Egyptians.
Oh.
Because they said, look, this is Pluto. He's the god of the underworld.
Yeah.
And so they said, oh, so if both our religions have the same god, then that means that we don't have to fight about religion because our religions are linked. So this is really important. Isis is both a Greek and an Egyptian god.
Yeah.
Serapis is Pluto and a god. Thoth is Hermes.
Yeah.
So Hermes' name is Hermes Thoth, I believe. So they're the same god.
I didn't know the Greeks did that with the Egyptians. Was that after Alexandria or?
This was going way back.
Oh. But they started worrying about more important things like gold and land instead of religion.
Yeah, when did this start? Ptolemy. So I guess it was after the Greeks conquered Egypt.
Okay. Yeah. So, but that would be like Ra would be Oranos then? If Ra is the eldest of, well, not the eldest.
Well, Ra is Ra Ammon. He's a combination of two. Well, Ammon, I think, was even a Sumerian god.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not sure if I don't think all of them are connected.
Yeah.
Instead, the point is that some of them are. Therefore, the pantheon is bigger than either religion thought.
Well, also Ra is interesting because he's the supreme god of the past. And you move on, getting all the way to Osiris? Is that the
Horus?
Horus, all the way to Horus and his father
Osiris.
Yeah. So Horus and Osiris. Horus is the ancestor. Ancestor of Ra. Ra is his great grandfather, something grandfather.
His grandfather, I think.
Yeah, but so Ra is like the old god, and then there's even older gods than Ra. But
so what I'm getting at is the Greeks, they have all the Greek gods.
Yeah. But
then they actually have the Egyptian gods as sort of like cousins of their gods.
Yeah.
And then if you look at someone like plink, 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 Eurydice's Orpheus. So Orpheus was a person.
Oh.
He is the founder of the Greek myths. He's the guy that wrote them all.
Really?
Yeah. And so Orpheus, I believe his name, I think it's said in here, his name might mean the dark one.
Huh.
Or the black one, or something like that. So there's theories that he was an Indian, I think.
Oh.
And that he came with his own teachings, and they sort of immortalized him within his own stories.
Yeah.
And then Homer added to the stories. But he is sort of the creator of the Greek mythology.
Yeah.
Odin was a person.
Okay. I was wondering how the Norse came into this, because I figured they would.
Odin came from Constantinople or Egypt, I think.
Yeah.
And he went through Europe, dropping off children at every nation he came across, basically, and they became the leader of that nation. And then he ended up being the leader of the Norse. And they already had the god. They had the same name, I guess.
Yeah.
And they combined the figures so that he was this wise leader, and the
traveler.
Yeah.
Sounds like.
Yeah, and they combined them together.
Yeah.
So another god is Mithras, who was the god of the sun. He was very similar to someone like Ra, I guess.
Yeah.
And he also died and was resurrected. Balder died and resurrected.
Yeah.
Odin was hung upon a cross.
Or a tree.
There was a bunch of gods. I can't remember their names right now. But they were killed, and then their bodies were put into a myrrh tree, and they were resurrected from the tree and came back to life. And so, to honor that, the Druids or other tribes would cut down these trees and bring them into their houses and carve holes in them and put little figurines in them of the resurrected God. That's Jesus, right?
Yeah.
So Serapis, going back to him, and how you said he looks a lot like Jesus.
Yeah.
So there was a figure. There was a emperor who decided that he wanted to destroy all pagan religions.
Yeah.
So he ordered his people to burn down the temple of Serapis.
Yeah.
Now Serapis is, as far as I can tell, one of the most highly regarded gods in all of history.
Yeah.
So the people actually, his soldiers refused to burn down the temple because they were afraid to do it. Because there's statues outside, and they're like, I'm not doing it. It's Serapis. I'm not going to, we love him, and we're not going to take him off. But eventually, I guess his threats were enough. So they went and they burned down the temple of Serapis in the name of Jesus.
Yeah.
And so they destroyed his temple. And when they were picking through the ruins of the temple, they noticed that there was symbols on the chairs and on the walls of the ruined building.
Yeah.
That were Christian symbols. And then when they swept away the ashes from the floor,
yeah,
they saw this full picture mural on the floor of Jesus.
Huh.
And they realized
It was a Christian temple?
that no, it wasn't. It was a temple of Serapis.
Oh.
But so they swept away the ashes of the floor, and they saw a picture of their savior, Jesus.
Yeah.
And they realized Serapis is Jesus.
Yeah.
We have destroyed the temple of our Lord.
Yeah.
Because this is him under a different guise, basically.
Yeah.
And all the teachings were the same. All the symbols were the same. All the imagery was the same. And they're like, we just destroyed this pagan temple that was Jesus.
I wonder, even then, so Sumerian or whatever, with what's his face, the Karsa Orlong of our mythology, the Super Chad.
Gilgamesh?
Yeah. I wonder, like, his myths, where they tie into that.
I think they all do. Like Mithras, sorry, wasn't he kind of related to that slightly?
Oh, maybe.
Anyways, they all tie together.
And does Okami fit in there, the sun goddess?
That's getting harder, maybe. A lot of stuff.
Okami died and came back to life.
A lot of stuff actually comes from the East. So I'll get to that, but back to my point, I guess. No, I won't get to the Okami thing because I don't know. But
I'll look into that myself. I'm curious.
My point is that all cultures and religions are actually intertwined, and they're the same story over and over again.
They've been going on forever, like the flood stories.
So when you say, "I will remove culture from my stories, not to offend anyone," you're removing the history of everyone from your story. And when you tell a story using anyone's culture, you are telling the immortal story of humanity. Yeah. And so stories are beautiful. They are everyone's story, because it's like Jung's. I understand. I think Jung's idea of the collective consciousness to a degree. Humanity has built this story. It is our mind. It is our life. Yeah. Our story is our life. We still have it, and we put it in everything. The story of any story written that isn't purposely destructive, like this guy's trying to write. Yeah. You look at.
Well, I have an example of a story that's been told over and over again.
I'm not even looking for one that's been told over and over again. We'll hear that in a second. Yeah. But if you tell me the story of Marduk slaying chaos, that is a story that resonates with me, because that is the hero going into chaos and creating order from it. Yeah. Right? That isn't the story that's told in Canada. It's told the story of Raven, who broke into the house of the gods and released the universe. Yeah. That is a story that resonates with everyone around the world, because our stories are for everyone. They're for humans. Humans are the same. And so this guy is saying, I want humans to not feel separated, but he is dividing humans into tiny cultural groups and saying they're not the same. Yeah. He's saying that Raven story is different from my story of Marduk. That is different from my story of Ra, the hero. This is different from my story of Horus, the hero. This is different from Hermes Thoth, who slayed the dragon. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And if you look at...
That's the picture of what's his face? That's Sigurd.
Yeah, it's Sigurd. It's St. George. Mm-hmm. St. George is based upon Hermes. And if you look at this...
Oh, that's Hermes as well.
If you look at this picture, right? Yeah. This is really... So he's standing on top the body of a dragon he has slain. Yeah. But you'll notice that his helmet has the sign of Scorpio, the dragon. Yeah. So he has killed the dragon, but he has incorporated the dragon into his circlet. Well... So you destroy the...
In one of the Fate series, Siegfried has the power to turn into a dragon.
I mean, yeah.
Like, they actually do put some work into that. They actually have some more thought put into it.
Maybe. Or they just thought it was cool. But the thing is, then, if it's cool, that's because it resonates. Mm-hmm. So, the dragons were actually caught, like, the dwarf became a dragon through greed. But the idea here is, the dragon is power, chaos, and destruction. Yeah. But that doesn't mean there isn't good within it that to use for yourself. And so, Hermes, the thrice greatest, that was his title. Oh. Because he was the greatest philosopher, greatest cleric, and greatest king.
That's quite a title.
They think he was actually a real person, but they attribute 30,000 books to him, so they figure that he didn't write all of those.
I didn't realize Hermes was such an important guy.
He is he's ridiculous.
I mean, he's the nicest of the gods in Greek mythology by far. Yeah. I don't think he's actually ever cursed anyone, unlike basically any other god.
Yeah. He stole Apollo's lyre, I believe.
Yeah, but he gave it back.
Yeah. Or maybe it was his sheep he stole. I don't remember. But anyway, so you had a story that resonated.
Yeah. Okay, so, I think it's the Salernitana here. Yeah. Have a story of, it started getting extreme, like the weather was getting really chaotic and things were going poorly. And The spirits, I think it was some animal. I don't think it was a raven. But one of the animals basically told a group of people, there's a storm coming. And it's going to be the worst storm you've ever seen. So cut down all the trees in the forest and make a raft out of them.
Mm.
And so they listened to the spirits and they cut down all these trees and they made an absolutely massive raft. And they all got onto the raft. And while they were on the raft, the spirit said, it was an animal, because that's what the spirits are like. I told you to make this raft. Now let me and my family onto the raft. And so they're like, okay, we'll let you on. And he's like, and if I am here, then let all the other animals on with us. And we will not fight while we're on this raft together. And so bears and moose and little otters, beavers, all the animals got onto this raft. Then a massive storm came and destroyed all the trees and anything that was on the raft. And the raft floated and drifted for something like 4 weeks, I think. And then it settled on top of a mountain. And they all got off on top of the mountain. And then slowly the water drained away. And the world was made anew. And they went and lived in that new world that was beautiful and clean again. So the Sumerians have a story of a giant flood came from the mountains. And it wiped everyone out, except for this one family who built a ship. And they saved they saved everyone they could and brought them onto the ship. And when the ship landed, that's where they found their cities and lived. There's, of course, the flood story Noah had. Yeah, the Bible.
And the Indonesians have one.
Yeah, so the Maori.
The Maori?
Yeah, the Maori, their whole mythos, why they're on all the islands, is the world flooded. And they got onto boats as groups, and they went and boated out and landed on islands, and they started living on those islands. But why they were on the boats in the first place is the world flooded, and so the Maori had to get onto boats and travel about. The Chinese have a story of the Yellow River flooded, worse than it's ever flooded, and wiped out all of China, and only people who were on the mountains survived. And then they came down from the mountains to lush new green lands. And a part of the story is those on the mountain were the wise men and women and their families, because they knew the mountains were closer to the divine kingdom, and that's why they lived up there. And then when all the unclean people are washed away by the flooding, and they came down, the land was clean, and they could farm there and use it again. And so they have their own flood story. They didn't build a boat, but there was a massive flood.
So, yeah, there's a lot of stories that are common throughout time, and the flood one in particular is interesting because it could be symbolic, symbolism that spread everywhere. This book actually has a grand unified theory of Atlantis that explains the flood myths, which is kind of fascinating. I don't know if I think it's true. I don't know if this guy thought it's true, but it fits really well. And basically the idea is that when Atlantis sunk, all the sages went out all across the world.
Yeah.
And the holy symbols of Atlantis were the serpent and the cross.
Yeah.
And you look at any religion and they have a serpent or a cross as their divine symbol.
Well, serpents are really important because they're the main predator of people.
But it's just this funny, so he's saying that's probably more likely, but it's like the Aztecs, they took from Atlantis the serpent, or the
Aztecs flood story is actually really interesting.
The Jews took from Atlantis the cross, or they took the Hermes' staff for the Greeks, but yeah, it's just this grand unified theory basically that the Atlantean sages went everywhere and taught everyone the same stories, but I thought it was fun. So getting to actually another very common story.
Yeah.
So first I want to talk about what happened with this book. So I was going through it, like I was saying, I learned about all these philosophers throughout time, right? So he goes all the way up to the modern age of the modern pragmatism in the United States. And so he goes through all the way through the Greeks to a lot more people I know, what was his name? I Think Therefore I Am, that guy.
Yeah, Kant,
Freud, Nietzsche.
The grumpy guy, the guy who says life's absurd.
He talks about Einstein. Yeah. No, he doesn't go to the life's absurd guy. No? Oh. That's after his time.
Okay. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's weird.
Well, no, you know what's weird? Yeah. This book was written before World War II.
Yeah.
He's talking about pragmatism. That's what the Nazis ended up using.
Oh.
And so he's talking about it it's this new it's this religion, this philosophy that's really gaining popularity around the world for its simplicity and its And I'm not saying pragmatism is wrong just because the Nazis used it, but it didn't have the stigma back then.
Yeah.
And he's talking about it as if it's just like the new fad that people are like trying out, and without knowing where that led.
Yeah.
And then the introduction ends. Well, it almost ends. And I think, okay, so the rest of this book is going to be going into these philosophies in more depth or something.
Yeah.
That's not what happens.
No.
He says, so now I have said from like Thales to the pragmatism, James William or something.
Yeah.
I've given you that idea. But of course, the Greeks didn't invent philosophy. And then it's like, you're kind of like, whoa. And then it's like, the Greeks got it from the East, from the Arabs, from the Egyptians, from the Orient.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, yeah, wow, that's crazy. So he's just going to go way back in time. And then he says, and those guys got it from the mysteries. And in capital letters, mysteries.
Yeah.
What the heck are the mysteries? He's like, those men and women who throughout history have been guiding humanity and using symbolism so that they wouldn't reveal secrets that most people couldn't handle, and leaving messages in things that would never waver, like building pyramids and statues to teach people that were able to read the symbols. And so this book is about the symbols of the mysteries. And I was like, the what? The mystery? And so I looked up the word mysteries.
Yeah.
We do not... So he used it right. We do not use it right nowadays. No. We use it for like a thing we can't understand. So mystery means initiation rite. So a mystery is basically an order or a cult. So think like the Masons or the Illuminati. That's what a mystery is.
Yeah.
So there was the mystery of the Druids. There was the mystery of... so I think that game might actually be called The Mystery of the Druids based on that.
Yeah.
There is the mystery of Bacchus. There is the mystery of Hermes Thoth. There is the mystery of Mithras. There is the mystery of Sol Eniac, which is... There's an American politician.
Yeah.
Formerly, he's now in court for some potential crime he did. His name is Augustus Sol Invictus. And because I was trying to figure out more about the god, and it's like, do you mean Augustus Sol Invictus? I was like, geez, what a cool name. Yeah, he might be a criminal, but cool name.
Yeah.
There's all these mysteries. And so then he starts talking about the teachings of the mysteries. And I just want to draw some things I've noticed from them. The mystery of Serapis, the Theon Septigrammatron.
Yeah.
So, what is very common in all of the mysteries, and not much is known about them because they were secret organizations.
Yeah.
But there was certain people like Socrates, actually, who knew their teachings but refused to be inducted into them because if you were a part of them, you weren't allowed to say what it was.
Oh.
But Socrates wanted to be able to talk about...
He wanted to teach others and talk about it.
So he actually refused to join the mysteries.
Huh.
And he was able to reveal some of their secrets, and they hated him for it. But because he hadn't broken any of their rules, they couldn't kill him like they normally would.
Huh.
But when you look at like a lot of... Like that thing of Ptolemy I showed you,
yeah.
I think I can actually read it now slightly from just a bit... Like, understand it a bit more. We'll get to that. So, do you know the story of Ishtar? Did I ever tell you that? How her husband died, and so she said, like, open the gates of the underworld, or I will raise up the living so they outnumber the dead, and they shall eat the live. Sorry, I shall raise up the dead so they shall outnumber the living, and they will consume them.
Yeah.
And so then they said, okay, you can enter, but to enter the first gate, you must remove your crown. And so she removes her crown. And then the second gate, they're like, to enter this gate, you must remove your earrings.
Yeah.
And so she descends into the underworld.
Yeah.
And at the last gate, she has to remove her robes. And then, so she's completely naked when she enters the underworld. And then she takes her husband and she leaves. Orpheus goes into the underworld to rescue Eurydice.
Yeah.
And takes her out.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of... Jesus dies and comes back to life. Mithras dies and comes back to life. It's very common to descend into the underworld. And so one of the very common teachings of all these religions is that life is death. So when you are in a corporeal human form, you are an immortal being who has essentially died. And you are now limited by a body. And so what death is, according to these, right, is... They have a really nice way they phrase it. But basically, people are... So the teaching of Hermes Thoth is that humans are immortal. And the only reason they die is because they worship. So yes, to the ignorant, the body is supreme, and they are incapable of realizing the immortality that is within them. So you think that, oh, I am this immortal. I am now trapped in flesh. This flesh is now all there is. So if I die, that's it.
Yeah.
And so what the great dragon told Hermes was, knowing only the body which is subject to death, they believe in death because they worship the substance which is the cause and reality of death. So it's like, a way you can look at it maybe is, if you worship, your body will die. Yeah. If you think you are your body, then you will also die.
Yeah.
And so, but you are immortal. And if you don't worship your body as who you are, then you are immortal.
Yeah.
And you can take that different ways. You can take that literally as like, I'm the spirit that is like going to ascend to heaven. Or you could just take that as, there's a lot more to you than just your flesh and bones and whatnot. And there's a lot more to you than your name.
Yeah.
And actually, I think it really ties back into what I was talking about with, are imaginary people real? Or are we imaginary people?
Yeah.
And I was wondering, suppose the only thing you lost was your name. Have you died? So like, because if you think your name is who you are,
yeah, then
you allow yourself to die. But if you think you are more than your name, then you are immortal, because everything else you've ever done will continue on. And yeah, I just think that's really interesting. But anyway, so a lot of this is the descent into the underworld, into the realm of death, which is life, as what we call life. So into the realm of the corporeal. So you descend into the underworld. Then, if you attain enlightenment, you leave, and in Ishtar's case, she donned each piece of her divinity as she left the underworld. And so you gain divinity as you leave.
Yeah.
In Hermes' Thoth, what he believed was, if you didn't worship death, after you died, or after your body ceased to function, let's say, because you're not dying exactly, you would ascend into, back into one of, because there was 7 people basically, and you are a descendant of one of those 7 people, and you ascend back into that consciousness. So it's sort of like the idea of we are all one. You ascend back into the great mind, except what you are is you've given up on your name, so you aren't that individual anymore, but your thoughts and your ideas still exist.
Yeah.
So what happens in this idea is, as you ascend into heaven, you pass through the 7 gates to heaven, basically.
Yeah.
And these are the 7 planets. And each of the planets asks of you to give up on something to prove that you are actually ascending and immortal. Or you will be trapped in death forever, or until the universe is reset and you have to try again. And so this ascendancy, so at the first, like at Mercury, let's say, you have to give up your... you have to give up your greed, so you can't want anything. You can't. And then at the next planet, like or the moon would probably be first, but the next planet, Mercury, then you have to give up your your hatreds. And then at the next planet, you have to give up your dreams. You have to give up your ambition. And then at the next planet, you have to give up your you basically have to give up on preconceived notions until you are nothing but pure thought.
And then you go to the avatar state.
It's the same thing, yeah. But the it's the same thing as the chakras. Yeah.
That's what I was saying.
Except the interesting thing is, Buddhism actually seems to hate the world. Like they reject the world, whereas Hermes Thoth and a lot of these other religions see it as more of like almost a testing ground, I think, or like a place you go to. So you can also view it as entertainment to a degree, I guess. Like you descend into mortal flesh, and then you hope to overcome your weakness and reascend. Yeah. And so that's almost like Ishtar didn't stay in heaven. She came down and then went back up. Yeah. Hermes Thoth, the teachings he bestowed upon humanity is that you have to ascend through all these layers. Yeah. There's another story, I don't remember what it was, but the guy, he basically became an immortal, and to ascend into heaven, he had to don 7 pieces of divinity as he ascended up into heaven. Yeah. But the stuff you give up on is very similar to the idea of the Greeks, where, you know that song from Hades? Yeah. Where it's like, you have no worries, no more debts. That's the stuff you have to give up on. Yeah. Like, you have to give up on your love for people, because your life is over. Like, that love isn't for you. You are now a being of divinity and of thought. Your love with that person ended. Your bodies loved each other, but you have to give up on your love. You have to give up on your
earthly remains, your...
Yeah, you have to give up on your debts, your fears, your worries, your ambitions, your dreams, your hopes, like all that.
Yeah.
And then you ascend, and if you fail this, then you're trapped in death forever.
Yeah.
And I think you can interpret that different ways. That can be a terrifying thought. That's the sort of stuff that Catholics terrify people with into being good Catholics because they're afraid of hell.
But another how many rings did Dante have? Was it?
It's in 7 or 9. Yeah.
Yeah, because like Dante's rings are basically the thing you get stuck on is the hell you're in.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly it. I think the way you can look at this is you're trapped forever if you're not pure, you're trapped forever, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't actually say that you can't become pure. Like if you're trapped at the gate of ambition, right? You are trapping yourself. You are worshiping death. The only thing you have to do is give up on ambition, and then you can move on to the next gate.
Yeah.
And so you are the only one trapping yourself.
Well, so the series Lucifer, their hell I think is a very interesting one. So it's this really cold, desolate wasteland of stone, and there's these pillars, and in the pillars are doors. And each door is someone's personal hell. And their own hell, a lot of the time, is them reliving something that happened in their life over and over and over again. And Lucifer, Satan, basically says at one point, like, the doors aren't locked in hell. You can leave whenever you want.
That's what the Christian hell was meant to be. That's what the Greek hell was, right?
Yeah.
Like, what it is hell is what you create. Mm-hmm. You create hell. God doesn't want you to be in hell.
When you're ready to leave, you can.
You are refusing to leave hell because you love hell and you worship hell. Because you think that's all there is hell.
Yeah.
But if you give up on it, So I think it's actually very similar to fears. Let's say you're afraid to go to parties and you're miserable and you're lonely and you don't have friends. But you would rather stay miserable and lonely because you are giving up a core part of your identity and you are doing something which will destroy you. Identity death, right?
Yeah.
And you are also going to hurt your concept of yourself, and you are going to do something that you don't know the result of. It could be far worse.
Yeah.
It could be the end of you as you know it. It's fear. But it's more than fear because it's the destruction of self. It's death. But if you go to the party, then you might make friends. Or you might be a terrible time. You have no idea. Mm-hmm. But often what happens is when you give up on your preconceived notions and move beyond the impassable barrier, death. Like death is the ultimate barrier. We have no idea what's on the other side.
Yeah.
But you give up on it and you move past, and you realize that there's a lot more room to grow on the it's like if there's a goldfish inside like this sort of like conch shell, let's say, spiraling out, and there's a bunch of walls in the conch shell. And the goldfish refuses to move beyond each wall because there could be danger outside the wall.
Yeah.
But every time it moves from the next chamber to the next chamber, it has more room to grow.
Yeah.
Even though it has to give up on the home it thought was safe and warm and its own.
Actually, I wonder, because like you said, we were talking about you have to leave the home or whatever. And the hero's journey is you're in the safe home.
Yeah.
Then you leave and grow.
Yes.
But then you come back.
Yeah, and you rebuild your home greater than before.
And the whole idea with what is Hermes' thought?
Yeah.
Is you're in heaven, you go down, then you come back up again.
Well, that's Ishtar, I guess.
Sorry, yeah, but you go back down, come back up again. So you're saying that most people leave home today and like move really far away.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're not completing the cycle.
No, they're not coming back.
Yeah.
Oh.
I wonder if that's actually like, you might need to leave for a bit, but I wonder if you might have to like go back to your hometown.
That is interesting. That is really
and
interesting.
And then rebuild it better than it was before.
That is actually really, really interesting.
Because we aren't going back, and then the hometown dies.
That's a really cool thought. I like that. Yeah. So something about Orpheus, so this is in the mystery of Orpheus, I guess.
Yeah.
So he went into hell to get Eurydice, and then they went out together. But he looked back.
Yeah.
And because he was worried Eurydice wasn't following him. Yeah. And then
Hades claimed her soul.
Yeah. So the underworld is life on Earth, right? Yeah. Orpheus is enlightenment. He is the teacher. He is the divine knowledge.
Yeah.
Eurydice is a human. Hades is just the lord of. He's nature.
Yeah.
He's the lord of the underworld. He is the background, the natural law of the universe.
Yeah.
So Hades doesn't really matter in this story. So Eurydice. So the enlightened descend onto Earth.
Yeah.
Down into hell onto Earth.
Yeah.
To bring back the humans with them.
Yeah.
The people. and to teach them divinity, right?
Yeah.
And so the people are free to re-enter heaven, which is the living world, and like where Orpheus is going, right? So Orpheus is bringing her to enlightenment, right?
Yeah.
Why does he fail? Because he doesn't trust her.
Yeah. He looks back.
He fails because he doesn't trust her.
Mm-hmm.
That is how teachers teaching the path to divinity fail. You must trust your students. If you don't trust your students, they cannot succeed.
Yeah.
And so that is the lesson in the tale of Orpheus, is the only way to bring someone to enlightenment is to trust that they will follow you when you lead them on.
Huh.
You cannot look back, because if you look back, then they will fail. I think it's very similar to you'll be turned into a pillar of salt.
Yeah. Or a stone.
Or a stone, yeah. In the 1001 Arabian Nights.
The tale of the singing tree, the bird who speaks, and the fountain of gold.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same thing. If you do not trust, if you don't trust the process won't work.
Yeah.
But it's also, another way to look at it is, when you trust people, they will achieve the greatest things imaginable.
Yeah.
Because people will move to fill in the room you leave for their trust. And so I think that the tale of Orpheus and Eurydice is actually amazing. Like, he is enlightenment, she is humanity. So whenever you see the underworld in mythology,
yeah,
I think it's very safe to say that the underworld is Earth.
Mm.
And when you are guiding this person, and when someone is going to divinity, they are, or when they're coming back to life rather, they're actually ascending to divinity.
Huh.
Through philosophy and knowledge. But the teacher must trust them.
Yeah.
So the mystery of Bacchus states that Bacchus, the god of wine, Dionysus, was sort of the most beloved of the gods, very similar to Balder. Mm-hmm. Like him and Balder are the same person, and Balder is Jesus. Bacchus is Jesus.
Jesus can turn water into wine.
Oh. Yeah, so Dionysus, the most beloved of the gods.
Yeah.
He was trapped by a mirror. So the Titans wanted to trap him, so they put a mirror in front of him.
Yeah.
And he looked into the mirror, and he was trapped by the mirror because, and this is really interesting, his reflection wanted his soul because it was a being that looked like him but did not contain the same things as him. So it was everything that he was without any of his substance.
Yeah.
And so he was transfixed by his mirror because he wanted to will his own soul into the mirror. Because when he saw himself, he thought it should contain a soul. So that is the same thing as worshipping your body, worshipping death. You are trapped by something that doesn't exist. It exists, but it's hollow. There's nothing to it but the mundaneness of earth.
Yeah.
And this is apparently, I think I got this right, that the reasons the Greeks knew the gods exist without logic or reason or proof is because if there is a reflection or a shadow, humans, then they must be a reflection or shadow of something.
Huh.
And therefore, the gods must exist because you are the reflection of the gods.
Huh.
So anyways, Bacchus was trapped by the mirror. I just think that's really cool. Bacchus was trapped by the mirror.
Yeah.
So the Titans descended upon him and tore him into little pieces.
Yeah.
And then they burned all the pieces and then doused them in water and then ate them. However, they couldn't eat his heart because the heart, Bacchus is enlightenment, he is knowledge, he is divinity. You can never destroy the heart of divinity.
Yeah.
And the whole, like, fire is, it's, I don't remember exactly how it goes, but, it's like the ultimate destroyer. Water is knowledge getting doused. Like, there's a whole symbology to that. Mm-hmm. The Titans, they are earth. They are mundanity. Yeah. They are the underworld. They ate him. Jupiter, Zeus, wanted to free them, and he's in the mystery of Bacchus. He is the god of death.
Yeah.
He is the lord over everything. He is the god of death. His thunderbolt represents his ability to destroy. It's the power of disintegration. And disintegration is the act of completely breaking something to its base parts, removing it, basically. Yeah. So he destroyed the Titans with his thunderbolt.
Yeah.
And from their ashes rose humans. So humans are Titans. They are the substance of the underworld. But because the Titans consume Bacchus, each human contains a piece of Bacchus within them. So each human contains a spark of divinity, which means that a human is a Titan shell with a piece of God within them. So their goal is to grow to the point where they can free that shard of Dionysus and reunite with him, and then he'll be resurrected.
Huh.
And so the path to learning and enlightenment is the path of freeing Dionysus. But if you worship the Titanic shell, then you're worshiping the underworld, or the evil, basically, of the Titans. And in their religion also, Zeus is the Demiurgus, I think it's pronounced, or Demiurgus, which means he is the master of the material world, which means he is not the supreme creator. He is the creator of Earth, and he is the governor of Earth. But the Demiurgus is the ruler of the mortal plane. He is not the universal creator. That is a higher divine power.
Interesting.
Who is God. So Zeus isn't God. He is the Demiurgus.
Yeah.
Which is very Lord of the Rings, I was thinking.
Yeah, it is.
And the mystery of...
I have a question. So after writing this book, did a group of very angry men in robes show up and summarily execute this guy with swords or something?
Yeah, you gotta wonder, don't you? But this is none of their teachings, basically. This is the tiny fragments that we have of some of their rituals and whatnot. Most of it's gone.
Well, as far as we know.
Yeah, well, so what the great dragon said to Hermes Thoth is that I will establish my mysteries, and because my mysteries are of me and they are my teachings, they can never die. And so they will always be taught forever throughout history.
And well, that's stories, isn't it?
So if he's... I guess, yeah. So if he's correct, then they're still around.
Yeah.
Now, I think that is actually, it sounds a very powerful statement.
Yeah.
It's actually the weakest statement to ever make. No one will ever forget that I said this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Either every time someone thinks, oh, he said nobody will ever forget I said this, he's right. Or they forget you said it, and they have no reason to doubt you because they don't remember that you said you won't forget. So you win. It's win-win.
Yeah.
So I don't think the Great Dragon was actually making that much of a claim. But, the mysteries are saying, you have divinity, and you got to trust it, and you don't worship death. And I think it just reminded me a lot of my idea of, it seems like humans are all... If humans were all Dionysus, let's say, in I'm speaking metaphorically here, not religiously, just to be clear, especially for people listening. So the idea, if you reascend to Dionysus, you are a part of him. So it's oh, do I lose myself? And it's you lose your body, you lose the thing that was Cameron.
Mm-hmm.
But if Lord Glove dies, and if I write in my book that he dies, he doesn't think again, right?
Yeah.
But that piece of him I created, and it comes back to me, and he has never gone from me. His thought processes are still within me.
Yeah.
But him as that entity doesn't exist. And I think that is how infinite souls in heaven is possible. Because if there is only one soul, God, you can rejoin with that soul without that soul ever diminishing itself in creating you.
Yeah.
Any number of you. And also, you never lose yourself by rejoining with it. It's not like you do lose yourself as a being, but you don't lose yourself as a soul because you are one and the same as that soul.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I actually like that idea or not, because it still is identity death to a degree.
Yeah.
However, Lord Glove is still within me. Mm-hmm. And so if we are the fragments of God's imagination, in my own words, then our death returns us to God. I mean, we were always with him, but from a corporeal sense, we have returned to God. But he is always with us, and we are always with him. And that sounds a lot like what Jesus says, actually. So I think it is the same lesson in all religions.
It's kind of weird, because the villain of my story in Morgoth is evil is slain, and its power is broken into pieces. And each one of its pieces is evil unto itself, and whenever those are killed, then their power returns to the greater evil.
Yeah, it's like that, but
different. I know, but Morgoth are the thing that's slightly based on Morgoth in my mind. But whenever you destroy a fragment of, I don't know, anti-divinity, it goes back to the anti-divine.
Well, that you would be imbuing... So the thing about Morgoth, right?
Yeah.
Is he is weakened by creating the orcs and the dragons and everything. Yeah. Whereas Eru is not diminished by creating the gods.
No.
So the pale imitation of him, his rival, can do the same thing. He can invest in himself within the world. However, the interesting concept, it's very consistent of God, is that God is infinite and can create of himself without ever diminishing himself. So he's like fire.
Yeah. So
or a magic penny, which like why didn't they use fire for that? So love is like fire, like that this magic. You're creating a whole new concept just to explain the concept.
So God could create himself and then arm wrestle with it.
Yeah,
and win.
Yeah. Well, actually, I had this really interesting thought of what was it? Was it could God cast himself down into hell? I can't remember. That might not be the thought, but there's something along that line where you know the idea of could God create a rock so big he couldn't lift it?
Yes.
But
yeah, and I think the answer that really annoys people is yes, and then he could lift it.
Yeah. But I think there was a concept I had of divine forgiveness.
Yeah.
Which was I don't remember how it worked. It was like could God cast himself down into hell?
So part of the Lucifer, the master of hell or whatever, but the series, and it's based off the DC comics, I think. So in the TV show anyways, he is invincible and he has no vulnerability. And then this girl shows up in his life, and whenever he's around her, he can be hurt. So it makes it really difficult, and it leads to like some fun shenanigans of basically like people shoot bullets at him and he doesn't care. And then she shows up and he's like, what on earth are you doing here? And then you get shot and like gets really hurt by that. But so that's like part of the story. But it's basically suggested that her birth shouldn't be possible. But Angel intervened, and God's basically messed around with things a bit to bring Lucifer to a woman that he could love. Is the whole idea. So that's like God brought him there, and the line that God says even in like the special side episode is like, what father wouldn't do something for his son that he loved?
Yeah.
But then later on, one of Lucifer's brothers has fallen, so one of the angels fell from heaven, and he couldn't get back into heaven until he let himself go back.
Yeah.
And that like actually turns out basically the angels' whole thing is they choose what they can do, and angels are incredibly affected by their own mind. And so although Lucifer is cast out of heaven and he's master of hell, but then he abandons hell and goes to earth in this story, it's very much implied that Lucifer could actually go back to heaven if he wanted to, but he doesn't because he despises heaven and God still. Even though God casts him out of heaven, it's he's basically almost like doing it for his own good, but he can come back whenever he wants.
Well, it's very similar to the human mind. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is something everyone hates, and it's not exactly true.
Yeah.
But for generalized suffering, you can just choose not to be sad.
Yeah.
And the reason that it doesn't work is because you are weaker than your mind.
Yeah.
And if your mind is broken, then it's going to win.
Yeah.
In a fight of willpower. However, there are ways around that.
Yeah.
Where you don't need to use willpower. But the other part of that is you can decide. This is kind of, I think, where what do you call it? Despair comes from. You can choose not to care about anything.
Yeah.
Because nothing needs to matter. Like this, I'm talking about little worries, not like you have a neuron firing wrong in your brain.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about something like you're like really worried about your relationship with your friend or your father or your mother or whatever it might be. You could just completely ignore that. Like you can't actually, right? Because you actually do care. But in theory, you could stop caring about the world. And that's what people do that are severely distressed and broken. They stop caring and they become nihilists.
Yeah.
Or like Joker, he just stops thinking anything matters so he can do anything. And that is possible. And that is the same idea. Like it's the same thing as allowing yourself to divinity.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that the path to destruction and the path to salvation are mirrors of each other.
Yeah.
They are very close. Like you have you are immortal and infinite in power as long as you let yourself be.
Yeah.
But that is also the path to destruction.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, it very much seems like in the Lucifer series that like each angel has their own special power. So Lucifer, like the strongest of them, his brother, can stop time. Michael, his identical twin, can ask you what's your greatest fear, and you have to tell him. Lucifer can ask you what's your greatest desire, and you have to tell him. So each one has their own power, but their powers actually like can change depending on what their personality is. Their powers are very much based
What
on
they
their
want.
personality. And so the guy who can stop time, when he fell, he lost his power. And then he needed to freeze time to save someone, and it's very important. And so he froze time because he was no longer, like, the limitation no longer mattered, and he stopped time again because it was what he had to do.
So Lucifer and Jupiter and Morgoth, they are all the demiurges. They are the ruler of Earth.
Yeah.
And so when Jehovah's Witnesses say Satan rules the world, that you know, you could look at it to say there's evil in all men's hearts, but you can actually take that literally as he is the ruler of Earth. But it's not a negative thing. It's he was put in command of Earth, and Earth is the realm of suffering.
Yeah. Well, also I don't know about Jehovah's Witnesses, but if God is all-knowing and has a plan, then Lucifer is probably a part of that plan. If he's ruling the Earth, that's probably a part of the whole idea within the religion.
Well, it's like he is the titan that the body of the people came from.
With Morgoth, there's this whole thing about Morgoth's discord, because Morgoth saw the world getting created, and he didn't like it. And so he created discord, and Morgoth's discord, by a lot of people, even Christopher Tolkien, is considered free will. Like, the discord of Morgoth was planned in a way. Like, Eru made Morgoth to make discord.
I don't even think that's necessary. Like, I don't think evil's necessary for free will.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, that's a byproduct.
But, well, I don't think it has to be. Well, it's an option, a byproduct, sure. But another way to look at it is Morgoth has no power compared to Eru.
Yeah.
If you look, so Morgoth, let's say, or Satan, is the ruler of the world.
Yeah.
But there is a universe. He is this tiny insignificant speck on this tiny insignificant speck.
Yeah.
He rules it, but he's nothing compared to Eru or God, the ruler of everything.
Yeah.
So he is the Lord of Earth, but it's like saying you're I don't know, you're the caretaker of whatever.
Yeah.
And the world is a place of suffering because that's where people trap themselves in the illusion of worshipping death.
Yeah.
And so he is the ruler of that place. So he appears as a being which is evil because he is the ruler over death. I believe, I could be wrong here, but I think that Satanus means the messenger of God, and Satan means the ruler of the world, or something like that. And Belial, the angel, is also called Satanus sometimes, apparently, or something.
Well, one of the big parts in the Lucifer series is, like, Lucifer's, I'm not evil. It's all of you guys who say I am. Like, that's a huge part. Is Lucifer's like, I'm just the ruler of hell. It was my job. It's like I was like, I don't make you sin. You guys do that.
Yeah, they're the one in charge. Like Jupiter in the Mystery of Bacchus is a supremely good figure, but he is still the ruler of the realm of suffering. But he has the power to totally destroy and to redeem. And so, it's an interesting way to look at it. We should wrap up now, I guess. There's another story. Well, there's so much more I want to say, but how about I end on just a funny story about one of the demiurges?
Sure.
So, in the Mystery of Gnosticism, is
this Nautilus's or?
No, it's we have to hurry. So in the Mystery of the Gnosticism, the Gnostics, like gnomic wisdom, that sort of thing. Okay. At the start of time, there was two supreme beings who were all powerful and all pure. Yeah. But one was much greater than the other. Yeah. Right. So they're both like pure and beautiful and strong, but they're the only things that exist. Yeah. And they both live for eternity, basically, in perpetual purity and harmony and everything. Then the greater of them speaks the word, or whatever, how you phrase it, and creates light. Yeah. So he decides he's going to start creating the universe, basically. So he creates light. And the lesser being thought he was alone in the universe. Oh. Until light was created. And then he could see the other supreme being. And then he became jealous of him because he was greater than him. And so then he became Satan, basically, and they fought. And so he was cast down to Earth. Yeah. And Earth was the place where he ruled for 3,000 years. Yeah. And then this supreme being came to Earth and fought him. Yeah. And they are currently fighting, and that is a fight which will last for 3,000 years. Huh. And so that is the battle within men's hearts between good and evil. And then the supreme being, which is greater, will win because he is greater. Yeah. And then he shall rule for all time.
Forever and ever.
Yeah. and with the greatness of exactly that's
and he shall rule forever.
It's the same story.
He shall rule forever.
Like Gnosticism is Zoroastrianism, and Christianity is based on Zoroastrianism.
Yeah,
and so yeah, they will fight, and he will win, and then he shall rule on earth forever.
Yeah.
So in that case, he was corrupted by by envy, basically. Yeah. But he is the ruler of earth, which is being fought by because he got there first, basically. But he's going to lose because it's just the. I just think that's a very funny story where he's like, "Oh, life is so good," and he's like, "What? I'm not alone here." Yeah,
it's a good creation story as they go. One I really like is there's a guy in his house with his wife, and literally that has all like existence. And then
goes outside and discovers the earth.
No, so he opens up his door. There's like nothing outside his door, and I can't remember the exact details, but basically he doesn't. His wife basically her complaining or something his wife does makes him go outside and create earth, and then he throws her onto earth and closes the door to his house, and his house drifts away. And then she's like on this desolate rock. And so she's really bored there and creates the like earth and like all of life. Then he comes back with his house and lets her back in after she's made the world. And then they become the supreme gods. But it's just like there was a guy in I can't remember exactly what it was, but it's a guy in a house with his wife and there's nothing. And they have a disagreement, and the disagreement comes to the creation of the earth.
Well, did you know that the pyramids are 68,000 years old?
Really?
Well, that's all we have time for today. I guess I could explain it, but
could you?
Yeah, but we've run out of time. I'm afraid.
Okay.
So